play.
Well, hello there. We are winding down from Wimbledon on WTA Weekly. And it's my great pleasure to have Pam Shriver join us to debrief on what I have to say was a wonderful women's singles tournament. Pam, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's like whether you play or whether you broadcast or whether you play the Legends event, whenever you go through 2 weeks of Wimbledon, or in my case, it'll be 3 weeks tomorrow since I left LA, my home. It's exhausting. Obviously, the ones that are feeling the emotions the most would probably be, Novak and Ons Jabeur being the finalists, not being able, being able to win 6 matches and not win the 7th. It's brutal. But it was a historic, amazing 2 weeks played under difficult weather conditions.
Yeah, for sure. I think they were probably a little bit concerned at first with that bit of a washout on Tuesday. I was actually trying to watch The Spectator on the Tuesday, and let's just say I really looked at the weather forecast and went, nope. But they did well to get back on track the way that they did. I know that there was a little bit of criticism, but I don't think that you can only play so much in one day. There were lots of days where there were lots of great action, and you were hopping from match to match, and there was always something very exciting going on. Are there any particular matches that you have particular fond memories of from the women's side from this tournament?
Well, my main role for the 2 weeks was for ESPN as a broadcaster, but the first week, and I wish it was longer, I did help as coach of Donna Vekic. So I had never been in a coaching situation at Wimbledon, but to see what Donna did, and I think the best women's match, or the most exciting women's match of the first week, and I know I'm probably biased, but Donna and Sloane Stephens brought it on court one. It was the Thursday of the first week. The tournament had already been greatly impacted by rain. Players who were on the top half of the draw, which was the easier half out of the hat. It was really hard. If you didn't have a roof over your head the first couple of days, you were scheduled 5 days in a row. And, you didn't have your normal beat. You didn't have your normal rhythm. But anyway, to see those two, it was an amazing match, and Donna coming back from a set and 2-5 down. So that was really memorable for me. But obviously, from a tournament standpoint, Svitolina's run was really special. Maternity leave, coming back from that, doing what she's done both at Roland Garros and here. And then obviously having seen Vondrousova beat Donna the day after this amazing Sloane Stephens match. So I kind of had my eye on Vondrousova from the first Friday. And I thought, wow, she's playing well. And did she ever?
Yeah. Oh, she really did. And it's an interesting thing because looking around, if you look online, I don't think anyone backed Vondrousova to win pre-tournament. I don't think many people were backing her to win on the day of the final. It very much felt like Ons's to lose. I mean, let's talk about that final. What do you think? And I think a lot of discourse around it has been around the Ons Jabeur side and sort of what happened with her. But what was it that you saw Vondrousova doing throughout the 2 weeks on her run, beating Donna and then going through a couple of tough matches with Bushkova and Pegula and stopping the Svitolina run? And what was it she was doing right, and how did she win it, essentially? Let's talk about the positives for Vondrousova.
Yeah, we have this expression in tennis, like under the radar. Like if a player is able to perform and go through their draw under the radar, meaning without the pressure of expectations, without pressure of a lot of media requests. I mean, Vondrousova's run was the ultimate under the radar. Even the day of the finals, everybody pretty much was thinking about Ans's story. I mean, sure, Vondrousova being the first unseeded player since Billie Jean King in 1962, 61 years ago, it obviously had some traction, but Ans had the weight, and she showed it on her face, right? The weight of the world. Whereas Vondrousova just played the way you're supposed to play, 1 point at a time, stay in the moment. She used her lefty skills perfectly. Her speed, her anticipation, just handling of drop shots, decision making. It was all like an athlete who didn't have the same pressure that was on the other side of the net. So she took advantage of a great situation, and she's lifting the Venus Rosewater dish. Unbelievable.
That's a good point. She was very much an underdog in her last 3 matches. Everyone was expecting Pegula to make her first major semi-final. Vondrousova pulled off her own amazing comeback in that match. And then everyone was rooting for Svitolina to get to the final. And Vondrousova was the one without the pressure and with maybe slightly less physical impact. Svitolina played a couple of tough matches. And then, Jabeur had the weight of the world on her shoulders. You were going to chip in on the Pegula win.
Well, I was working that match in the play-by-play position. Who was I working with? I think I was working with Mary Jo Fernandez. And, it's a point for Pegula to go up 5-1 in the final set. It's like you're almost filling out your draw. You're almost writing Pegula in the draw. And there were many sliding door moments for Vondrousova to win, but that was the biggest, most obvious one. But there were other ones, like even I mentioned how when Donna played her in the round of 32, the third round, the Sloane Stephens match, which was played less than 24 hours before, was one of the most emotional matches Donna had ever played and won. It was crazy. And so that played into Vondrousova's hand. It was literally like when you go back and look who Vondrousova beat and what their match was before. Like, look at Ons in the semis. Look what she had to do in this quarters, actually in the 32 16s quarters semis. I mean, it was crazy. And so when you think about it now, it kind of makes sense. Like, the bottom half had to go through so much. Whoever got through on that bottom half that was packed beyond packed was going to then, maybe be a little bit out of gas in the finals. And that's what ended up happening.
I mean, would you say that Ons was out of gas more than the nerves then? Was it physical? Was it physical more than mental?
I thought it was everything. I thought, the way Ons was able to shake it off against Andreescu, right, on center court. And Andreescu obviously helped her in that 4-all game. And Ons had enough in the tank, but there was something about that final 1 year later, trying to get what was her ultimate dream. It all caught up to her. The fact that she went out there to practice on center court, it was the wind storm. It was a terrible wind. It was the worst wind I'd ever seen at Wimbledon in my 45 years. So and then there were some showers. And so between everything, they were going to close the roof. So they offered either one of the finalists, the opportunity to practice on center. Vondrousova stuck to her routine. She still went to Arangi. And then when Ons came out, we were watching on the monitor. I couldn't believe it, wearing all black shorts and a T-shirt on center court. It was so like, wait, stop, go back, change. And she played for like 7-8 minutes before somebody came and told her, that one of the officials told her she needed to change. That is not the way you want to have your half-hour warm-up before a final. And then also, I don't understand why she came out like 8 minutes early from the locker room to, because ESPN, who I was working in the studio, and we always show as soon as the finalists leave the locker room and they're in the common area where you can show them on a camera, and literally she was 8 minutes early. So I don't understand I don't understand. It seemed, even from my distance, like she wasn't in her routine, and you need to be in your routine in a final.
Something I noticed of watching the final back was how much of it looked like Ons was rushing. So it's interesting to say she came out 8 minutes early. There were a lot of points where it felt like she was trying to pull the trigger too quickly, or trying to it didn't. She was going for winners, or kind of trying to be as aggressive as possible. I'm thinking beginning of the second set when she went that early break down, particularly, she came from that bathroom break and she's like, right, I got to come out swinging. And I think Miles was on a point, like her headspace was a little bit scrambled, and sort of what I was expecting, maybe when someone's battling the nerves or being a bit disrupted, you'd say there was a little more tightness in there, a little bit less on the shots. I think there was a little less on the serve, but the indications were it was a little bit of both. It was almost trying too hard in many ways. I don't know if that's maybe what you saw.
Well, yeah, to me, physically she looked okay. She just didn't look okay emotionally. And I know she has her mental coach with her, and they had spoken, Melanie, I can't remember her last name, but anyway, Melanie and Ons had spoken outside the locker room one-on-one for several minutes before the semifinals. And then when Ons came out 8 minutes early, originally when I saw that, I'm like, okay, she wants to find Melanie. She wants to talk to Melanie. And then Melanie did appear, but it was just like, I don't know. It was just, and look, a final feels so different from a semi or a quarter. It's like nothing else. And even though Ons had been in two others, it's almost like a fingerprint. Each and every final has its own, thumbprint, its own unique profile. And whatever it was, this final did not gel with Ons at all.
That would make sense. Whereas Vondrousova, by contrast, I don't think it took her a little bit of time to settle as well, but she kind of settled by being quite content to sort of play the game that sort of got her there, keep herself in the match, and play the disruptor, which she's very, very good at. And I think maybe it's worth going back to Vondrousova on that point, because I feel a little bit sorry for her in many ways, in that I think a lot of people were doing well up for her winning this title if it wasn't in this specific circumstance of playing a very, very sort of tight on Jabeur with sort of that weight and that history and that sort of emotional connection to Wimbledon that she seems to have built up. I mean, with Vondrousova, would you say that she's finally fulfilling her potential or exceeding expectations?
Well, look, if you'd said in 2019, when she was one of the last two standing at Roland Garros, would you be surprised that player who lost in the finals to Barty would go on to win one major? You would have said, absolutely. She's 19 and she's in the finals of Roland Garros. So of course she's probably she could win one. But then when we saw what we saw the last 4 years, I know she got to the, gold medal match at the Olympics, Tokyo, in the summer of 2021. But boy, just like so many major finalists and major winners in women's tennis the last 7, 8, 9 years, they do not follow it on. So I'm kind of mixed about it. I always felt, being a lefty and as talented as she was in the juniors, and at 19 getting the finals in Roland Garros, I was like, okay, where are you? Where are you? And then here she is. So it's almost like, like the bird that goes underwater, like, where are they? Where are they? And then she popped her head up, and it actually made total sense. Even though she'd only won 2 grass court matches in her entire career at the tour level before this year's grass court season, she has a natural game for grass. So yeah. I don't know. The two wins blows me away actually more. Only 2 wins prior to this grass court season blows me more away than her winning Wimbledon this year.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, that form, I mean, completely breaks any form book you could have attempted to put together before Wimbledon, as I often try to put together before Wimbledon. And like Vondrousova featured in it in kind of the long list because she got to the quarterfinals of Berlin. And I thought that was where I think some people kind of picked up on her doing well potentially, or being because she did look good. I think I remember John being in Berlin covering it, and he was saying Vondrousova actually looks pretty good. So maybe
so did Donna Vekic, by the way.
She did, yes.
Yeah.
She did. And I guess how much did the injury history with Vondrousova play a part in her maybe going a little bit under the water, as you say? Because the BBC coverage in the UK made a big deal of the fact that she this time last year at Wimbledon, her hand was in a cast.
Yeah. And I went back and I actually looked at her social media posts from a year ago. You know what? She didn't know that going to Wimbledon last year might serve as an inspiration for this year, but I do think it did. I think that was a brilliant move of her to make. Not that she was, can you imagine you've had your wrist operated on, you're in a soft cast or whatever it was, and you're taking like months off from the sport. Can you imagine to the special tournament you decided to go as a spectator that 1 year later you'd come back and win? It's crazy. But I also think someone like Vondrousova did tap into the legacy of players from the Czech Republic, starting with Martina, who's born there, obviously played under the U.S. flag during a lot of her 9 Wimbledon wins. But I totally think at the end of the day, the lefty from Czech knew that she could follow on from Navratilova and Kvitova.
You got there first, because I was going to ask you, what is it about Czech left-handers at Wimbledon? Because it's not just Navratilova, it's also Kvitova.
Yeah. Well, and I think lefties, no matter where you're born on a grass court, the spin, grass loves spin. I mean, there's a reason why. It's not just because grass is slightly lower bouncing. The grass takes slice and ends it shorter. I mean, look at Jana. Unbelievable. Obviously a righty in Czech. I just love that shot. And Ons, besides taking, let me just say, as I look at that of Jana, Ons Jabeur should take inspiration from what Kim Clijsters spoke to her about in the locker room, about how many times it took Kim for losing finalists. But also, most of all, Jana Novotná was the greatest redemption act Wimbledon's ever seen, given, how the finals against Graf, 5 years prior to her winning. So anyway, I like that you've got that up there. I think if Ons was watching this, she would have a smile on her face.
I would hope so. I mean, I would hope that players would, if a player watched this show, that they would feel positive about how we speak about them. And I definitely do. I was thinking about this exact thing of Ons Jabeur almost being the new Jana Novotná, and that story is very much still brewing. And Ons is still 28. She's got at least a couple more runs at this. Maybe she would benefit from being a bit more of an underdog in the next time round. But who knows?
Hey, and you know what? It was so sorry, Nick, I cut you off. It's so unlucky that Ons was not more of an underdog in the finals. And when I say unlucky, obviously, if you could order up an opponent on paper, like whatever Vondrousova was, 42 in the world, only won 2 grass court matches before this grass court season, to play in the finals of Wimbledon, you would take playing Vondrousova every single time. But as it turns out, the magic sauce for Vondrousova was that Ons Jabeur felt so much pressure as the favorite in a major. Even if Ons was the favorite a little bit, or a co-favorite last year with Rybakina, she was the clear and obvious favorite this year, and it turns out it was just too much.
Yeah. So Vondrousova is now top 10. Yep. How long do you reckon she's going to stay there for?
I have no idea. I mean, back in the day, if a woman player, back in my era, if you won a major, you just set sail. You just had unbelievable amount of confidence that you could perform close to that same level at the next major. You actually felt less pressure and more confidence because you won that major. So one of the most difficult things I have is trying to understand like why so many of recent success stories in majors haven't continued. And I can't tell you what's going to happen here. I wish I could, because what's best for women's tennis is that Vondrousova continues and she continues her story.
Mm.
And I want to see, you know, actually Raducanu should like look, because she had hand surgery, right? Now there's, I don't know, so like 3 surgeries.
Like both wrists.
Yeah. So, I mean, talk about somebody who should say, ha ha. You know, this is an inspiration for players who've had injuries. And I think most of the major winners, whether it's Andreescu, who's had quite a few injury issues. Name me other. I don't know.
Yeah, no, there's been a few over there. Less recently, but like Ostapenko went under the radar for a bit, about a year after she won Roland Garros.
Absolutely.
Sloane Stephens, maybe you could put in that category.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Emma, because
Kenin.
Yeah, Kenin. Yeah, I mean, she got to that Roland Garros final, but then after that, yeah, stuff seemed to happen to her. And it's interesting you mentioned Raducanu, because yeah, I was thinking, you know, as we would talk about Vondrousova's wrist injury, like if there's any Emma Raducanu fans watching, they're probably going to be hyping up her to come back pretty strong when she hits the court. And she recently posted a photo of herself back finally in the gym, getting ready for that comeback. So yeah, I mean, we have been seeing a little bit more consistency on the WTA tour, it has to be said, because obviously for the first 6 months of the year, we've been talking about there being, at least in this moment in time, maybe not for, we don't know how long it's going to last, whether it's going to be just this year or for future years, of a, quote, big three of Swiatek, Sabalenka, Rybakina. Where do you see that dialogue between, of having those three players very much being in control of the women's game at the moment, continuing now? None of them made the final for the first time. None of them made a big final for the first time this year. Is it a blip, or is it a sign that maybe the second half of the year is going to be a bit more competitive?
Well, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I actually think that Sabalenka, Rybakina, and Swiatek can all have really good second halves of the year, while also, you know, having some, you know, other players like playing really well. And, you know, it's, to me, women's tennis is still a jump ball, and a jump ball is an expression in basketball. Like, you know, it's anybody's possession. Like, whoever can grab it in the moment, which is one of the reasons why I was intrigued by getting into the coaching game with Donna, because I do feel like there's a lot of opportunities still there, even with what we've seen from, I mean, Swiatek's been a big force for a couple of years now, right? Mm-hmm. And seeing what Sabalenka and Rybakina, how they followed up their major wins. So I hope what it shows is that in women's tennis, it's going to start a trend again, which is, if you win a major or you get to the finals of a major, you believe that you belong there. Oh yes, that was us. That's when that was at Donna's candle what do you call it, at an art gallery in Wimbledon, like a couple days before the start of the main draw. And I saw Francis walk by, and I went out and I pulled him into the gallery, and it was such a lovely moment. Thanks for posting that picture. Anyway, so I think they're going to continue to perform pretty well, Sabalenka, Swiatek, and Rybakina, but I think there's plenty of room for others as well.
Yeah, and do you know what? Maybe that's been the sign of the year so far, because, I mean, okay, I made a tongue-in-cheek tweet that got way more traction than it should have done. It was just a really dumb joke, but I basically said there's a big four on the WTA, which is Sabalenka, Swiatek, Rybakina, and the entire Czech Republic. because
That's a good one.
because that seems to be what it is. It's like these three plus whichever Czech player is performing well, because we've seen Krejcikova, Kvitova at a couple of tournaments this year, Mukova and Roland Garros, and now Vondrousova.
Can we throw in doubles from yesterday?
Yeah, Strycova. I can't believe she's stopping. She could carry on. She's playing really well.
Oh, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but yeah, and aside from the link to the Czech Republic, or Czechia, I should think they prefer to be called now. You're right. There's been these other players who've been in there and mixing it with the big three tournament. Arguably, Jabeur's in that category, and had she followed through, we'd be throwing her in the mix as well. Probably should still throw her in the mix. So yeah, I think that's maybe because we've been assessing between these three being the most consistent. You're absolutely right. There is always going to be a tournament where a player or two will pop up and join them in the fight and really challenge them. I mean, Jabeur took down Rybakina and Sabalenka
in the half that was just really and Kvitova. I mean, and Andreescu. I mean, her draw was crazy. So I think that was another thing that maybe we could have anticipated, is that eventually, when you have such a tough pathway, it does catch up to you.
I think they said on the women's final coverage on the BBC that the only time in history a woman's come from a set down in a quarter, a semi, and a final was in 1925. So before even the Open era. So you're probably right. We probably should have expected on Strand of the Gas, but we also expect records like that to be broken, right?
Yeah, and we don't know. We don't know. I mean, a lot of times it's like after the fact, you look at a draw and you just kind of go, "Oh, it's obvious, right? It's obvious it fell that way, that Ons would have come up short on, given all that she had put out to get to the final. No wonder she had nothing left in the tank." And this happens at majors. I kind of started the call by saying, by talking to you, by saying everybody feels tired towards the end of a major. But usually adrenaline and other factors can kind of carry a player through. But, in this case, it didn't happen. So anyway, I think, the hope is she's such a popular figure that, Ons can learn how to perform, late in a major without feeling like she needs to kind of shed that she's carrying the weight of a continent or the weight of a culture or the weight of a, the Arab world and a female's, like, it's hard to carry that as well as your own desire to win a championship like Wimbledon. So
that's maybe where Ons Jabeur goes from here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw sort of 4, 5, maybe 6 names at you and sort of like, what can they, and the question for each of these names is the same, is what can they take from this? What can they go from here, basically? Where do they go from here even? I'd say the first one probably to throw out there would be, let's start with the obvious one, Donna Vekic. She must be feeling, this grass court season must have been a real confidence boost for her. I mean, you're right. I was absolutely thrilled by watching her come back, and I thought she might do it again against Vondrousova. But she must be pretty tired.
It's a combination of both. Like, it's some satisfaction by having a good grass court season, but knowing that the person you lost to after you beat Sloane and performed at such a level went on to win the tournament. And it's funny, Donna had a vision that she might actually be able to break through and win, and that the whole team was going to have tattoos. So isn't it funny that it was Vondrousova? So it was like maybe the way the tennis gods had it, it was whoever won the Donna Vekic Marketa Vondrousova match on court 15 in the mid-afternoon on the first Friday, they were actually playing for the Wimbledon title. So anyway.
How do you feel about avoiding getting a tattoo, Pam?
Well, for right now, I would have love to have a tattoo. It would have been awesome. I would love to.
Okay. Well, let's see how
thought.
the US Open goes, maybe.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see. I mean, look, again, I mean, Swiatek will be defending title holder. She'll be the favorite. But you got Sabalenka, Rybaka. You got so many players that love to play on a hard court. So
Yeah,
it's going to be amazing.
I think so. And you're still planning on being in the on the team for that?
Yeah. I'll be working for ESPN and Donna. This is my first few majors doing this dual role. It's wasn't something I planned, and I'm finding it at I'm 61 now, and so sometimes my energy level, and I get tired at the end of the tournaments, which I don't like to admit to, but I'm having a really good time. I'm learning a lot. Like, tennis is still offering me a lot of new opportunities 45 years in from playing my first Wimbledon, so I feel lucky.
And I think it's amazing that you clearly still love the game and you've found ways to still be very much involved in it, and you clearly still as passionate about it as when you broke onto the scene as a teenager in the 70s.
Yeah, and probably the thing, speaking of breaking onto the scene as a teenager, probably the thing I feel strongest about is behind the scenes, and in my own maybe not so behind the scenes way, trying to push towards having the tour be as safe a workplace for all female players, no matter their age, and having members of their team. The WTA has done a good job of bringing a stronger safeguarding measures in. There's a course that I had to pass in order for me to, if I show up at a regular WTA tour event, I needed to be able to pass this test, which I took it and passed about a month ago. And these are, important things for me to feel like are happening, because it does, you want to contribute in a way from learning from your own situation and just help encourage a safer workplace.
Yeah. And so it must be a massive relief to you to see the progress that has been made then.
Yeah,
obviously there's still a way to go.
Yes,
but
there is still a way to go, but what you do want is progress, and that's what's happening.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to throw a couple more names out and see what maybe I want to get your thoughts on. Again, where do they go from here? Let's start with let's go back to the big three. Let's talk about Iga Swiatek. I think there was someone who had a question about her before, and like maybe she is putting out the message that she thinks she exceeded expectations at Wimbledon. She did have a draw that favored her a little bit. But the way she kind of dipped, maybe slight concern.
Yeah. So here's the thing. It's sort of interesting. I mean, Swiatek, amazing. She's already won 4 majors. She's got more of her career, assuming she has like the length of a normal career. She doesn't end it early. She has a lot more in the future than in the past. But I'm surprised still when I see her look so under stress, in such, like, I don't want to say the word panic because that's probably too strong, but it is sort of like a semi-panic mode. When things aren't going well, you can see it. She really advertises it on her face. And usually in tennis history, if you're number one, you have a look and you carry yourself a certain way. But it's interesting. I saw it at Wimbledon, and maybe with the grass courts, because obviously it's a surface that she has the least amount of confidence in past wins. But it happens on hard courts. It happens when somebody hits the ball hard and through her. Not that it can happen on clay as well, but more on the other surfaces. So that's my only concern for her. Otherwise, her talent and her dedication is unquestionable.
Yeah, I agree. As someone who really enjoys watching Swiatek's game, she does exhibit stress a lot. What I find interesting is now she still wins most of those matches, even when she's showing that stress, which is is interesting. I went back, I wrote a piece about, oh, hang on, she's actually still winning these tight 3-setters, which I was like, okay, maybe showing off the pressure and showing that she's frustration that she's not winning, because I think that's what it is that she's now expecting to win, and the frustration when it's not going that way is very clear. So I think it's interesting to see how that kind of develops and how she manages it, because I think I've seen great players exhibit sort of that frustration maybe a lot more later in their careers. I remember seeing Serena under visible stress during points in 14, 15, 16.
Great example. Yes, for sure.
And
Rafa, listen, even the great Rafa Nadal, when you think about how he's shown stress through the years at times, it's like, so I don't want to like say, it's not easy for any athlete, even a number one athlete, to not exhibit outward stress. We saw it from Ons as the favorite in the finals, but it's just that when you've won 4 of them and you've been number one for 16 months, I don't know, it's just kind of like a bit of a head scratcher for me that she felt that unease.
And maybe it's the fear of losing it. Who knows? It's only she knows the answer, and Daria as well. It'd be interesting to see sort of when she eventually is toppled, because that will happen, how she reacts to that and how she bounces back from that. And I think the woman who is very likely to topple her, I'm expecting to topple her this year because she's been the player of the year so far, is Elina Sabalenka, if she can overcome this apparent Grand Slam semi-final problem that she has. What are your thoughts on Sabalenka at the minute?
Yeah, I mean, look, the only semifinal she's won was over Lynette in the semis of this year's Australian Open.
Good point.
And if you look at the other 5 losses, they've been really painful. I mean, U.S. Open, the year that Leylah Fernandez lost to Raducanu, that was a prime example of a situation that she might have overcome. But look, if you had told me somebody who was serving between 15 and 25 double faults a year and a half ago would be able to turn around and do what she's done and serve the way she served, I would have said no chance, because generally when the service yips come into play and affect your play, it doesn't ever totally go away. So I feel like Sabalenka's already way surpassed my expectations based on what I observed a year and a half ago. And I think she's shown us her competitive character by how she's been able to do it.
Yeah. And you made a great point about the fact that her only semi-final winners over Lynette, and the others were against really tough players.
Yeah.
I think Fernandez is going to show us again what she can do. We just got to wait for that. But all her other losses have been in 3 sets. Despite, I was kind of being a bit flippant with the headline, and you can see it across the bottom of the screen. She's lost 4 out of 5 Grand Slam semi-finals. Those losses have all been in 3 sets. She's won a set every time she's played a major semi. So there's no reason to believe that she wouldn't win the next one when she gets there. So yeah.
And by the way, her record, let me just say, her record in majors, having big wins from a set down, is incredible. So kudos to her competitive spirit. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, she's very much in the mix for the US Open title. I would expect to put her among the favorites. And I would also include the now former Wimbledon champion and this year's Indian Wells champion, Elena Rybakina, in there. I mean, we're looking forward to the US Open, where the last few years where Indian Wells has been in spring, the Indian Wells champions won the US Open since Osaka in 2018. Obviously, Rybakina's now been defeated in what was probably on the whole a good loss against Jabeur. She made that match competitive. It probably faded a little bit in that 3rd set in the quarterfinal. But yeah, where do you think Rybakina's at right now?
Well, she has the most impressive serve since Serena Williams was dominating women's tennis leading with her serve. I think she's still sort of learning to live with the big target and being one of the big three or top three in the world. I actually think she's followed on from her Wimbledon win really well. Like if all women tennis players after winning their first major did as well as Rybakina did in the 12 months following, then we would have an absolutely jam-packed top 10. So I give her a lot of credit. I give her team credit, which is, not always easy for me because, I consider some of what I see from her team is a little bit unsettling, but I feel like I totally respect her as an athlete, given her power, given how she uses her serve. She has a hold serve mentality, which I love and can relate to. I didn't have anywhere near the follow-up game that she has, but she uses her serve to really set the table. And I think for women's tennis, frankly, I love when a serve is a dominant shot. And maybe in the next, 12 months or a couple of years, the serve will even stand out more because in my mind, besides the Swiatek forehand, the Rybakina serve is the other big shot in women's tennis. I mean, Sabalenka has plenty of power and plenty of big shots, but this serve is special.
Yeah, I agreed. And it's interesting. I think she won that Wimbledon title not even serving at her best. I don't think. So yeah, I think Rybakina is going to have a special relationship with Wimbledon going forward. I reckon that she's going to be winning another one or two Wimbledons and SW19, especially with the game that she's got, that serve, flat forehand, great placement with it.
Although the forehand can break down, like Donna beat her in Berlin. And if you go hard, it's very interesting to think of the data coming out of what Novak did against Sinner in the semis and other examples. It's this idea of going firm and fast at a big forehand. You can even say this to play Swiatek. If you go firm and fast at the forehand side, a lot of forehands will break down.
Yeah.
So she has to, that's the thing that.
And it's how you cope with that pressure going to your big weapon, because you're absolutely right. And every player's struggled with that. Even on the men's side, Roger and Rafa, everyone goes, why do you go to their forehand? And yet it works if you're able to pull it off. I think it worked against Serena sometimes with someone having a really, really good day. So I know we're kind of pushing how much time we've got with you. So I've literally got 2 left. So not players, just player, and then one last question about sort of the tournament as a whole. So you mentioned her at the beginning. I feel it'd be very remiss to not mention Elina Svitolina, the 4th semi-finalist. Obviously had that amazing run in many ways, was the secondary story of the tournament after the final. I'm kind of watching her, and a few others have been watching her going, she's probably playing the best tennis she's ever played, right? Or she was going to reach that semi-final, and Vondrousova discombobulated her a little bit. How do you, is that something that you're seeing as well? Or is the 2017, 2018 version still has a little bit of an edge?
Well, I see a player in Svitolina who's had 2 life-changing events happen in the last recent bit of time. That would be the birth of her first child, which is a joyous occasion. And the other one is a real tragic situation, which is what's going on in her homeland of Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So for some reason, the mix of these 2 life-changing events has inspired Svitolina to play a different kind of game that's more of a modern day, this is how you succeed in women's tennis, which is, you have to have aggression, you have to have weapons, some power, and she's just stepped it up in every way. And it's almost like these life-altering events have forced her into more of a growth mindset, to being open to a different way of playing. And then sometimes when you just have a plain old pause in your career, for whatever reason, injury, pregnancy, acts of God, war, you come back a different player, a different person. And that's what's happened here. And her story's phenomenal. Like what she's done the last couple of months is one of the best stories of the whole tennis 12 months.
Yeah. And look, top 30 within 3 months with no other points to defend. That is incredible. I mean, if she keeps this up, she's definitely going to keep going up the rankings, and we have to keep seeing her as a contender. And you're right. I think, look, it's an interesting combination, what it can do to someone and how it reacts. And, you've had to deal with various different challenges on and off the court in your own career and bounce back from that and keep going. So it's interesting to see how that goes with Svitolina. Okay, last thing I'm going to ask you is, are there any other stories from this tournament that we would be remiss not to mention, or just give a shout out to whilst we're here?
Well, I want to give a shout out to Chris Eubanks, from the U.S., who had the great run to the quarterfinals, and all the support and that he has received and offered to WTA Tour players. The first time I ever met Chris, or I really met him and spoke to him, was when he partnered Coco Gauff in mixed doubles at the U.S. Open the year that Coco Gauff, it may have even been the year before she beat Venus at Wimbledon. It was, she was either 14 or 15. So I want to kind of celebrate, ATP, WTA, Tennis United, and like Chris Eubanks is a great example of benefiting from Tennis United. It's funny how even a figure like Kim Clijsters played an important role in Chris Eubanks getting prepared to try and improve his grass court game. And also Kim Clijsters helped try and console Ons Jabeur and could relate to what Ons is going through, having lost. Ons lost the first 3 majors she played in, and Kim lost the first 4. So anyway, I guess that would be my last parting thing, is just how great it is, and it makes tennis distinctive, that men and women compete together in the same event and support each other. And Chris was a great example of the benefits.
This is why I do this, because you get things like these conversations I had no idea about. I mean, I knew Chris and Coco had a friendship, and they've obviously been supporting each other. But yeah, you're right, and it's really great to hear the support that he's been giving. I don't think Tennis United's been mentioned a lot in the last few months. It had a lot of traction at first, and I don't know if that's always been the conversation. And you're right, it is great to see men and women sharing the stage at these big events, and showing off the beauty of sport for everyone. So yeah, it's
honestly,
been
it's what makes tennis distinctive. There's no other sport where men and women walk shoulder to shoulder as often as they do in tennis. So, let's capitalize on that, and let's keep it as a positive, and let's have both men and women benefit from it.
Absolutely. I think tennis needs to definitely keep that in mind. Pam Shriver, thank you so much for coming on and allowing us to pick that amazing tennis brain that you've got, and break these things down. Really great to possibly talk about Vondrousova and Jabeur and all these other players, and have a little bit of an insight into what it's like to behind the scenes of coaching a player as well in Donna. And I wish you and her all the best for as long as this partnership continues. And Donna Vekic is a player that I've been hoping to see a big breakthrough from, and it's clear that she's got the game to be a big player for a while. So all the best with that.
Thanks, Nick. It's been fun to share this last bit of time with you. So thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you. And safe flight home. Recover well.
I'll try.
Thanks very much, Pam. You can just exit and fly off into the distance and hopefully land in LA.
Thank you so much. All the best.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so I can just do that and then we are away. Nick, listen, I think that is pretty much everything covered. Just want to say a big thanks to you. It's been a stellar run over the last, what's it been, 3 months, I guess?
It's been about 3 months, yeah. We started doing this, I think our first show was about Charleston.
Yeah, beginning of the sort of clay court season, exactly, yeah. So what's that, beginning of April, I guess, to middle of July, April, May, June. I mean, it's probably 3.5.
With Hanlon, I think. Was that the first one? I think it was.
Yeah, because he was there, I think.
At Charleston. We talked about it and we talked about the tournament. And yeah, I've had an absolute blast doing this show in 3 months and getting to really just show how much I enjoy the women's game at the minute. And sharing that with all the crazy people who come on, none crazier than yourself.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I mean, fortunately, I've managed to bring some guests in. I mean, Handler was great, as you mentioned right at the beginning. I mean, he was there in Charleston, and we've obviously had Pam, and we've had Renee Stubbs. And, you know, obviously we've had Mario and Jakob, I think, as well. Who am I missing? One or two more, I'm sure. Caitlin Thompson, of course.
Caitlin Thompson, Renee Stubbs.
Renee Stubbs,
Sophia Shepatova.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. And there was one occasion when we couldn't find anyone else any better. So I just came on. I think it was just before Roland Garros.
And that was probably one of the most fun shows I've done, to be honest. Even if I did feel like my tennis prediction skills were being very much being cross-examined. And it has to be said that no one from my power rankings actually won Wimbledon in the end. But if anyone had Marketa Vondrousova on theirs, then I will tip my cap to you.
Well, listen, Nick, you didn't have Vondrousova in your power rankings, but one thing you did do is you did say, don't forget, this time last year, no one would have probably had Rybakina in the power rankings. Maybe an honourable mention at best, but possibly not even that. I mean, she was 150 to 1 shot, I think, to win the title. So be interesting to know what Vondrousova was. But yeah, it's been great. We're going to continue with the WTA Weekly, but Nick is going to have a well-earned rest for a couple of months. And we're going to have, I think, Jakob is going to be presenting on a weekly basis, probably most of the time in its usual kind of slot on a Monday. I know once or twice we had it on a Sunday night, but I think with now moving over to North America and the time zones, bearing in mind many of us will be based in Europe, I think it probably will end up being around this time every Monday as well. So for those of you tuning in and still with us, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and also hit the notification bell so you know every time that we go live with these shows and you don't miss out on some of the guests that we've just mentioned. And I'm sure there'll be many, many more coming up. Of course, before I let you sort of conclude proceedings, Nick, we've got tomorrow, we're going to have a look back at the wheelchair tournament at Wimbledon. And then on Wednesday, we're going to do doubles as well. I know I've still got Mark Cripps, I think his name is, or Mark anyway, has written a book about all 4 Grand Slams going back 30 years when he was attending them. And I've got a copy of his book, and we're definitely going to have him on at some point in the next, hopefully, few weeks, probably before New York. And obviously, we've got tournaments coming thick and fast. On the men's side, I know Newport is getting underway. We've got Hamburg next week as well. What women's tournaments are coming up this week?
So there are 2 women's tournaments happening on clay this week. One in Palermo, which has Daria Kasatkina as the top seed. In fact, her first round is against Martina Trevisan. Match the tournament first round. Like the rest of the draw is, got some scattering of names, but like somehow they put the 2 biggest names in the first round against each other pretty much. So that could be a fun one. And then there's a tournament happening in Budapest as well. In fact, actually, it might be worth keeping an eye on in Budapest because Elina Svitolina is playing, and she's won her opening match today.
She's playing She's been played today, did you say?
Yeah, she won in 3 sets, so she's into the
okay.
second round.
Yeah,
So
she didn't qualify for Wimbledon in the end, which will obviously be a bit of a disappointment, bearing in mind she made the quarters or semis in Berlin quarters, I think.
yeah, quarters.
Yeah, so she didn't win her following that. So after she spoke to Talking Tennis, she didn't win her next match, and then she didn't even qualify for Wimbledon. So not sure if she feels as though she's a friend of the show anymore, but we're going to hang on to it.
Friends of the show are actually doing pretty well. I mean, look at Liam Brody getting the biggest win of his career.
Yeah.
Lara Siegmund in
doing okay
the doubles. She got a big win there.
Yeah.
Got to the
Yeah,
quarters.
it's not too bad. Do we have Quinton Hallis? He's kind of friend of the show category, more or less. Dominic Thiem is a stretch, both in terms of friend of the show and, more importantly, his success since he was on the show. And I say on the show, having me put a microphone in front of him a couple of times. But yeah, listen, it's been a good run, and I'm sure we'll be seeing Nick again in a couple of months, especially when New York gets underway. The US Open, I should probably specify, and it's been big thank you to you, Nick. Of course, none more so than your coverage in Birmingham, which was stellar.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. I did not think that I would be that I would be doing something like this, and it's been tremendous amount of fun for this next 3 months. And whilst I am looking forward to this break, I'm definitely up for coming back for the US Open. I really, US Open last year, being on with the team and watching all those matches together, the Halep Sneaker match, where we were all four watching it, watching the match, and all slowly realizing that this story was developing on the stadium was great. And doing this is massively elevating my enjoyment of the majors as well. So
from then all the way through to this recent Wimbledon, and you and I were together, of course, for Jabeur's semi-final. I mean, I know there wasn't a perfectly happy ending, but we'll still have that.
It was a great moment, and we were both super excited about it. And everyone in the comments as well. Like, it's always been fun having some banter with Max about various musical pieces, Jane's encouraging words, Ghosty's attempts to wind me up, and I'm looking forward to interacting with everyone again as soon as possible. But I'm also very excited to see what Jakob does on the show as well. But yeah, it's always a lot of fun doing these with you, John.
Cool. So, do you want to see us out with some words?
All right. Well, I can see there's a few people still watching. Thank you for joining us. If you're new to the channel, please like, subscribe, follow for all the coverage that John's mentioned, talking to Mark, still debriefing about the Wimbledon tournament, and building back up for the American hard court season. Because whilst we've got a little bit of a blip with the European clay, there's going to be let's go tournaments in Washington, and then we're going to Canada and Cincinnati, and before you know it, we'll be in New York. And Jakob's going to take you there for the WTA side. But
he's going to sail the ship, fingers crossed, slightly more successfully than the Titanic, let's face it, as he's this is on par with the Titanic, so the only way is up. So I'm just going to say, during all this next 6 weeks, keep talking tennis, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.